You're watching Noir Street. I'm your host, Nero Wolfe. Every story hides a secret, and every shadow hides a clue. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. Subscribe, tap the like button, and join us as we drift into mystery. Chapter 1. The green ribbon was the first offense. Not because it was green. December in New York is one long parade of green, and not because it was ribbon. Fritz has tied more bows than most men have tied neckties. It was the bow itself. Too neat, too smug, too sure that a little holiday trim could make an ugly message look like a gift. Fritz brought the envelope in with the 10:30 tray. And if you have never seen a man deliver breakfast as if it were a religious rite, you have never watched Fritz Brenner set a tray beside Nero Wolfe's chair. The coffee was exactly where Wolfe wanted it. The grapefruit exactly halved, the toast exact, the eggs exact, and the envelope, cream paper, heavy stock, set apart on a small plate, as if it might stain the silver. Wolfe noticed it before he noticed the eggs. That tells you how bad it was, because Wolfe notices eggs. He did not touch it immediately. He watched it. Wolfe can watch an inanimate object, the way a lesser man watches a stranger in a dark alley. His eyes half-lidded, his lips pressed, his broad hands idle on the arms of the chair. Then, he said, without looking at me, "You have lied." That was Wolfe at his gentlest, simple, direct, and entirely correct. I was at my desk in the office, pretending to work and actually sorting the morning mail into piles. Wolfe will enjoy refusing this. Wolfe will refuse this without enjoying it, and Wolfe will pretend he never saw this. I glanced up. "Morning," I said. "And how's your day going?" Wolfe's eyes did not shift from the envelope. "Last Christmas Eve you told a lie to a policeman. That narrows it down to only the lies involving policemen," I said. "Want the list alphabetized?" His gaze lifted, and when Wolfe looks at you like that, calmly, steadily, as if you're an exhibit, your wisecracks start to feel like pennies in a cathedral. "You chose kindness over truth," he said. "Now kindness has acquired a price." Fritz hovered, silent. Because Fritz has learned that if Wolfe starts talking about truth before he starts eating, the meal has already been ruined. Fritz withdrew with the tray, which is Fritz's way of giving God and Nero Wolfe room to operate. Wolfe finally took the envelope between thumb and forefinger, as if it were sticky. He slid a letter opener under the ribbon and loosened the bow without cutting it. The ribbon fell to the blotter like a small, bright snake. He withdrew the single sheet of paper, read it, and handed it to me. Wolfe does not toss notes. Wolfe passes them the way a judge passes down a sentence. I read, "Mr. Goodwin, you lied on Christmas Eve at 11:20 p.m. to protect Marla Dean. The lie is known. The reason is known. You will keep silent and pay for the privilege, or you will speak and bury her. Deliver $25,000 in cash to the ornament display at Hudson Arcade. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. come alone. The ribbon is green because your lie was dressed for Christmas." No signature. No flourish beyond the ribbon, which meant the sender enjoyed irony and believed he could afford it. I read it twice, because the first time my stomach was busy. When I looked up, Wolfe was watching my face. "Well," I said, "that's charming. A man who thinks a ribbon can make extortion festive." Wolfe's voice was mild. "It is accurate." "What is?" I asked, though I knew. "The name, the hour, the fact of your lie." His eyes narrowed. "The writer was present, or he was informed by someone present. Either possibility is inconvenient." "Inconvenient is my specialty," I said. "Wolfe, anybody could guess I've lied. It's practically a hobby." Wolfe made a small sound in his throat that meant my humor had been filed under waste. "This is not about your general habits. It is about a specific truth you attempted to conceal. You will now tell me what you concealed. There are moments when you have the childish urge to pretend you can't hear. Wolfe is good at removing childish urges from your system. He does it without raising his voice, which is part of why he is Wolfe. I leaned back and said, "Last Christmas Eve, Marla Dean called me." Wolfe's eyes remained steady. "Continue." "She was scared," I said. "She said she had made a mistake, and her husband could not learn about it. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Adultery, I didn't say. You did not need to, Wolfe said. Proceed. I exhaled. She told me to meet her near Bartholomew's around 11. I met her. She was rattled. While I was trying to get her into my car, Inspector Kramer and Sergeant Stebbins came along. Noise complaint in the neighborhood. Somebody running out a service entrance, that sort of thing. Kramer saw Marla and started asking questions. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. And you supplied answers. I supplied a story, I admitted. I told him Marla had been with me at a charity rehearsal and had stepped outside for air and got spooked by a drunk. Kramer bought it because he had other fish to fry, and because Marla looked like she might faint. Wolfe sat very still. And your kindness was that you lied to a policeman to protect a woman's marriage. I wouldn't call it kindness, I said. More like bad judgment with holiday spirit. Wolfe didn't smile. Who is Mrs. Dean's husband? Clifford Dean, I said. Money, real estate temper. The kind of man who can ruin you without raising his voice. Wolfe nodded once, as if placing Clifford Dean in a mental cabinet, labeled men who believe they own the air. Then he said, and now someone is threatening to reveal the lie unless money is paid. Unless I pay and keep silent, I said, or unless I speak and bury her. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. That phrase is not sentimental, it is logistical, it suggests planning. I opened my mouth to answer and the doorbell rang downstairs. Fritz appeared in the doorway a moment later. His face was calm, but his eyes flicked toward Wolfe in that small warning signal he allows himself. Mr. Wolfe, Fritz said, Mrs. Dean is here. Wolfe's lids lowered. Send her in. Marla Dean entered like a woman walking into a courtroom. She was in her 30s, with dark hair pinned back and a coat that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. But the coat didn't help her because fear shows through wool the way cold shows through glass. Her hands were gloved and clenched, and her eyes went straight to me as if I were the last solid thing she'd grabbed before falling. Archie, she said, and there was gratitude in it and panic behind it. Wolfe indicated the red leather chair. Sit down, Mrs. Dean. She sat stiffly, as if the chair might accuse her. Her gaze flicked to Wolfe. Mr. Wolfe, Archie said you were discreet. Wolfe's voice was dry. Mr. Goodwin says many things. I held up the note. Marla, you got one too. Her face went pale. She reached into her handbag and produced an envelope. Cream paper, green ribbon, same smug bow. She handed it to Wolfe with the caution you use when offering a match to a man holding gasoline. Wolfe read it, then passed it to me. It said, Mrs. Dean, I know where you were on Christmas Eve. I know who you were with. Mr. Goodwin lied for you. You will obey now, or the truth will be delivered with proof. Bring Clifford Dean to St. Bartholomew's tonight at 10 p.m. for a private conversation. If you warn anyone, the proof goes to him tonight without you. Marla's breath came in short, thin pulls. He has proof, she whispered. He said photographs. He said receipts. If Clifford sees it, Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. Your husband may be displeased. Marla's gaze snapped to him. He will destroy me. He won't just leave. He will ruin me. My father, her voice cracked. The foundation, Wolfe's head tilted. What foundation? Marla swallowed. The Dean Family Relief Fund, she said. It underwrites Northside Shelter's holiday gift. Card Drive. I'm on the committee. That made a small click in my head, like a latch-catching Christmas. Charity, money. Wolfe's eyes were on her now, fully awake. Ah. Marla's hands clenched tighter. Mr. Wolfe, please. I don't want the police. I don't want scandal. I just want it to go away. Wolfe watched her the way he watches an orchid with a bad leaf. Not unkindly, but without indulgence. Mrs. Dean, you have attempted to purchase silence with secrecy. You have merely increased the cost. She looked at me. Archie, tell him I didn't mean. I know, I said softly, but intention is not a shield, Wolfe said. Who was the man? Marla stiffened. I won't. Wolfe's voice went colder, and the room did too. Then leave. You have entered my house with a problem, and you are refusing to provide the necessary facts. I do not work in fog." Marla stared at him. Then her shoulders sagged the way a person sags when she discovers she has no pride left that will keep her alive. "Peter Kells," she whispered. "He worked for the foundation, accounting. My father dismissed him last month." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Dismissed for what reason?" "For discrepancies," Marla said, voice thin. "My father said Peter couldn't be trusted. Peter said it was misunderstanding. He said he'd be ruined." Wolfe nodded once, and the nod was not sympathy. It was structure. "A dismissed accountant," Wolfe murmured. "A charity fund, gift season. A convenient scandal, you see, Mrs. Dean. This is not merely blackmail. It is a mechanism," I said. "Wolfe thinks whoever sent the notes isn't bargaining." Wolfe's gaze held Marla. "He is scheduling." Marla blinked. "Scheduling what?" Wolfe's voice was like a verdict delivered without drama. "Your burial." The word landed. Marla flinched as if struck. Wolfe continued. "A blackmailer who wants money leaves room for negotiation, hesitation, excuses. This one gives times, locations, instructions. He does not request. He orders. He is not seeking payment as an end. He is using it as a tool to arrange events," Marla whispered. "Why would he do that?" Wolfe looked at her, and for a second, his expression was almost weary. "Because your life is not the prize, Mrs. Dean. Your life is the leverage. The prize is whatever your leverage can move." I felt the hairs on my arms lift because I knew what Wolfe was circling. "Money," I said. Wolfe nodded. "Always." The doorbell rang again, and this time it was not tentative. It was an assault. Fritz appeared, calm as ever. "Mr. Wolfe, Inspector Kramer is here." Marla's eyes widened in fresh terror. "No." Wolfe lifted a thick finger, and she froze. Wolfe looked at me. "Mr. Goodwin, you will say nothing." "That's going to be hard," I muttered. "It will be impossible if you try," Wolfe said. Kramer's voice boomed from the hall, loud enough to vibrate the glass in the front door. "Wolfe, open up. I got questions about Christmas Eve." Fefeni glanced at Wolfe. "And what about the Hudson Arcade drop tomorrow at 6? Wolfe's mouth tightened. "A leash made of schedule. We will not wear it." Fefeni lifted his eyes to Fritz. "Tell Inspector Kramer to put men at Hudson Arcade at 6, quietly. We will not attend." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "And our scheduler has arranged an audience." He looked at Marla again, and his voice was quiet, final, and entirely Wolfe. "You chose kindness over truth, and now kindness will be buried. Unless you permit me to exhume it first." Before Marla could answer, the doorknob downstairs rattled again under Kramer's fist, and I had the uncomfortable feeling that the next envelope would not be tied with ribbon at all. Chapter 2. Kramer's fist on the front door sounded like a man trying to knock down a house by sheer indignation. Fritz, who can make even opening a door look dignified, went to admit him with the resigned air of a butler admitting a plague. Inspector Kramer came in with Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins in tow, overcoat unbuttoned, hat in hand, face already red. He looked from me to Marla Dean to Wolfe, and decided, in the first 2 seconds, that he was going to dislike every one of us for a different reason. "Well," he barked, "ain't this a pretty picture?" Wolfe did not rise. He did not offer his hand. He regarded Kramer as if a mud puddle had learned to speak. "Inspector," Wolfe said, "you are loud. If you intend to arrest someone, do it promptly and depart. If you intend to inquire, reduce your volume. This is a residence, not a saloon." Kramer's eyes narrowed. "I intend to find out why Goodwin fed me a story Christmas Eve." Marla flinched. I saw her hands tighten in her lap. She had a look that begged me to do something impossible, like take back time. I leaned back in my chair and said, "Kramer, you've asked me questions on Christmas Eve before. You ask a lot of questions. It's your hobby." Kramer ignored me. He stepped forward and jabbed a finger toward Wolfe's desk, as if the wood might be guilty by association. "Your boy told me Mrs. Dean was with him at a charity rehearsal," he snapped. "Now I'm hearing Northside Shelter had trouble that same night. Around the same time, I'm hearing a safe got opened late, and I'm hearing your boy's name in the same breath." Wolfe's eyelids lowered slightly. "That's his version of leaning in." "Northside Shelter," Wolfe said. "Proceed." Kramer's nostrils flared. He didn't like being instructed, especially by a man sitting down, but he liked ignorance even less. "Northside had a holiday fundraiser," Kramer said. "Gala donors, volunteers, gift cards stacked up like candy. Their finance office keeps a safe for the cards and the records. According to their staff, the safe was opened late Christmas Eve, around 11, without any scheduled reason." He swung his glare at me. "And right around that time, I run into you and Mrs. Dean near St. Bartholomew's. You tell me she's been at a charity rehearsal with you. Then somebody at Northside tells me Tom Baird, their finance man, mentioned you by name. You want to tell me that's all coincidence? If it was coincidence, it was the kind that kills people. Wolfe doesn't believe in those. Neither do I. Not when the ribbon is green," I said carefully. "Kramer, the lie I told you on Christmas Eve was to keep a woman from being torn apart at home. It wasn't about safes." Wolfe's eyes flicked to me. "Nevertheless, it has become about safes." Marla's voice came out thin. "Mr. Wolfe, please." Wolfe held up a finger without looking at her. She stopped instantly. Wolfe's finger can stop a woman's panic the way a traffic light stops a truck, because it is law in that room. Wolfe addressed Kramer. "Inspector, you have two matters, the lie and the shelter safe. Tell me what you know of the latter." Kramer's jaw worked. "Not much. They didn't call us Christmas Eve. They handled it internally. People do that when they're embarrassed or when they've got something to hide." Wolfe nodded once. "Yes," Kramer continued. "This morning, the executive director called. They did an inventory, gift cards missing. A lot of them. Their finance man, Tom Baird, was supposed to meet them early. He didn't show. They found him. Stebbins, who had been standing quietly like a man hoping his notebook would protect him, cleared his throat and said, 'Behind the building, Inspector, in the service alley.'" Kramer's eyes stayed on me as he said it. "Dead." Marla made a small sound that wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite breath. She put a hand to her mouth, eyes wide, as if her own sin had just acquired a corpse. Wolfe did not react outwardly. He simply absorbed the new fact like a man receiving a bill he expected. "How?" Wolfe asked. "Stabbed," Kramer said, blunt. "At least twice. What it looks like right now. No wallet taken, no watch taken. Whoever did it wasn't shopping." Wolfe's lips tightened. "Time of death?" "Early hours," Kramer said. "Cold, hard to pin down, but he didn't make it to dawn." Wolfe leaned back slightly. "So Mr. Baird was killed after the safe was opened, and before he could speak?" Kramer's eyes narrowed. "That's what it looks like." Wolfe's gaze shifted to me. "Mr. Goodwin, your lie is now adjacent to a homicide." "Terrific," I muttered. "I always wanted my own little holiday murder." Kramer snapped. "This isn't a joke." "No," I agreed. "If it were, it would be funnier." Kramer turned his glare on Marla. "And you, Mrs. Dean, you want to explain why you were out at 11:20 Christmas Eve, looking like you'd seen a ghost, while Northside Shelter's finance office was doing something it shouldn't." Marla's face went white. Her lips parted, but no words came. She looked at Wolfe, the way a drowning person looks at a rope. Wolfe said calmly, "Inspector, you will not interrogate Mrs. Dean in my office." Kramer barked a laugh. "She's a witness." "She is a frightened woman," Wolfe said. "And if she is harmed, Inspector, your pride will not be a suitable substitute for her pulse." Kramer's face reddened. "I'm trying to prevent harm." Wolfe's voice stayed level. "Then listen." He gestured toward the note on his blotter. "The one tied with the green ribbon. We have received a blackmail demand. It names Mrs. Dean and Mr. Goodwin. It specifies the precise time of the lie you now complain of. That suggests knowledge, not speculation. Now there is a dead finance officer at Northside. Therefore, your complaint about my assistant's honesty is no longer your most pressing problem. Kramer stared at Wolfe, then at the note, then back. You got a blackmail note, I said. 2, one for her, one for me. Same ribbon, same smug little bow. Stebbins leaned forward slightly, eyes bright with curiosity, and then remembered himself and looked solemn again. Kramer growled, "Hand it over." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Number." "The hell you mean no?" "I mean," Wolfe said, "that I will share what is necessary when I am satisfied. It will not be mishandled. At present, Inspector, you mishandle breath." Kramer's fists clenched. For a moment, I thought he might actually try to snatch the paper off Wolfe's desk, which would have been entertaining in the way a street fight in a jewelry store is entertaining, briefly. And with property damage, then Fritz appeared in the doorway again, and this time his calm carried a tiny fracture. "Mr. Wolfe," Fritz said, "there is another envelope." It was pushed through the slot. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. "Bring it." Fritz came in holding a second cream envelope. It had a green ribbon too, but this one was not neat. The bow had been tied quickly, almost angrily, and one corner of the paper was smeared with something dark. Marla's breath caught. Kramer swore under his breath. Fritz set it on Wolfe's desk as if it might bite. Wolfe didn't open it at once. He looked at it, and in that look, I saw the same thing I'd seen the night before when he studied the ribbon. Irritation, not fear. Wolfe does not fear men. He fears disorder. Then he opened it and read. His face did not change, but the air in the room did. That happens when Wolfe concludes something unpleasant. He handed the paper to me. I read, "Mr. Wolfe, your involvement is unnecessary. If you insist, Mrs. Dean will be next. Tell Mr. Goodwin to pay. Tell him to keep silent. If you attempt to protect her, you will be burying her. This is not negotiation. This is a schedule. No signature again, no flourish again." But the corner smear looked like dried blood, and that was flourish enough. Marla made a sound like someone choking on panic. "No, no." Kramer snatched the note from my hand before I could decide how to deny him. He read it, and his face turned the color of a bad tomato. "Son of a," he began. Wolfe's voice cut in, calm and heavy. "Inspector, you now have what you wanted, proof that my assistant's lie has been weaponized." Kramer glared at Wolfe. "This is evidence. This is a threat. This is my case." "It is also my house," Wolfe replied, "and my assistant and my client." Kramer's mouth tightened. "You're telling me the same guy who's blackmailing your boy killed Tom Baird?" Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "I am telling you the same enterprise that knows an exact minute and ties green ribbons is now removing pieces from the board. Mr. Baird appears to have been removed because he could speak, or because he had already spoken." Stebbins ventured. "Sir, the note says schedule. That's odd wording." Wolfe's gaze slid to him. "Not odd, accurate," I said. "Wolfe thinks this guy isn't bluffing. He's already doing the follow-through." Wolfe nodded once. "Precisely, a bluff demands reaction. This demands compliance." Marla's voice was thin. "Mr. Wolfe, please, tell him to stop. I'll pay. I'll do anything." Wolfe looked at her then. His eyes were not unkind, but they were not comforting either. "Mrs. Dean, if you pay once, you will pay forever. If you comply once, you will comply until you die. That is the nature of schedules." Kramer barked. "We'll protect her. We'll post men." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Inspector, your protection consists of uniforms and noise. Our adversary has already opened a safe without force, killed a finance officer, and delivered a note into my house. Do not insult me with your optimism." Kramer's face reddened again. "What do you want me to do, Wolfe?" "Sit on my hands." Wolfe's tone turned dry. "If you could restrain yourself to sitting, it would be an improvement." Kramer glowered. Stebbins shifted, uncomfortable. Marla sat trembling like a wire under tension. Fritz hovered in the doorway, his expression carefully blank, as if he could will the world back into order by refusing to show emotion. I leaned toward Wolfe. All right, North Side Shelter, Christmas Eve, safe opened. Tom Baird, dead. How does my lie tie into that? Wolfe's eyes remained on the blood, smudged corner of the note. Your lie created a plausible frame. A frame for what? I asked. For Mrs. Dean to have been at North Side, Wolfe said. For you to have been there with her, for your presence near Bartholomew's to be explained as charity business. A blackmailer does not only extort, he arranges narratives. Kramer stared. You're saying he'll frame her for the theft? Wolfe's gaze moved to Kramer. Cool. It is likely Mrs. Dean's money and reputation make her an excellent scapegoat. Mr. Goodwin's lie makes her proximity believable. Mr. Baird's death makes the stakes lethal. Marla whispered. I didn't steal anything. I know, I said softly. Wolfe said, truth is not the shield in a frame, belief is. Kramer slapped the note on Wolfe's desk. So who wrote these? The husband, the lover, the accountant? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. We have a name, Peter Kells, but names are not answers. They are openings. Kramer scowled. Then I'll pick him up. Wolfe's voice went icy. If you seize him without intelligence, you will either arrest an innocent man or drive a guilty one into darkness. In either case, you will not prevent Mrs. Dean's scheduled burial. Kramer's jaw worked. Or impossible. I am correct, Wolfe replied. He looked at me. Mr. Goodwin, tell me precisely what you observed last Christmas Eve. Not your feelings, not your motives, facts. I started to speak, and Wolfe held up a hand to stop me. First, Wolfe said. Time, you said 11:20. Yes, I said. That's the time Kramer quoted. That's about right. I looked at the clock in my car when I pulled up. Location, Wolfe said. Near St. Bartholomew's, I said. Madison Avenue, a side street close by. Marla told me to meet her there. Who else was present? Wolfe asked. Kramer and Stebbins, I said. A doorman from Marla's building came up later. Some passerby, a guy in a delivery jacket, and I hesitated. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. There was a car, I said. A dark sedan, parked half a block away. I noticed it because the engine was running. I thought it might be a cab waiting. But it didn't move when we moved, it just sat. Kramer's eyes sharpened. Why didn't you tell me that? Because you were yelling, I said. And because I didn't think it mattered at the time, I've since learned that not thinking is hazardous. Wolfe nodded slightly. It matters now. He turned to Kramer. Inspector, you will send men to North Side Shelter immediately, quietly. You will secure the finance office, the safe, and any records of access on Christmas Eve. Kramer bristled. I already have. Not enough, Wolfe said. And not properly. Kramer's face reddened. But he nodded. Because even he could feel the shape of this thing. Not a simple theft, not a simple blackmail, but a connected mechanism that had already produced one dead man and promised another. Stebbins scribbled notes furiously, as if writing could protect him from consequences. Wolfe looked at Marla again. Mrs. Dean, you will remain in this house. You will not take your husband to St. Bartholomew's at 10. You will not answer calls you do not recognize. If your scheduler wants an appointment, he may make it with Inspector Kramer's men instead of your pulse. Marla's eyes widened. I can't, Clifford. Wolfe's voice was flat. Your husband is irrelevant at present. Your life is not. Marla swallowed and nodded, because there was no arguing with Wolfe when he was like this. He was not being kind, he was being efficient. Wolfe returned his gaze to me. Archie, you will go to North Side Shelter. Kramer snapped. No, he won't. I'm not letting your private operator contaminate my scene. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Inspector, your scene already contains a dead man. Mr. Goodwin will not make it worse. If he does, you may arrest him and enjoy it. Kramer glared. but he did not say no. He knew, the way bulls sometimes know, that the gate has already been opened. Wolfe continued, "You will speak to the executive director and the treasurer. You will learn who had access to the safe and why it was opened late Christmas Eve. You will learn what Mr. Baird knew and to whom he spoke, and you will do it without heroics." "Define heroics," I said. "Any action that requires me to tolerate your obituary," Wolfe replied. I stood, grabbed my coat, and felt the cold weight of the second note settle in the room like a warning bell. Kramer was still standing there, fists clenched, face hot. He looked at Wolfe, and then at Marla, and then at me. "This is going to blow up," he growled. Wolfe's eyes were half lidded again, calm and contemptuous. "It has already exploded. Inspector, we are merely counting the shrapnel." As I headed for the door, Wolfe's voice stopped me, quiet, certain. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, "the writer of those notes is not bluffing. He has already begun cleaning the board." I paused with my hand on the doorknob and felt the phrase sink in. Cleaning the board meant removing pieces that could interfere. Tom Baird had been one, Marla could be next. And if the man with the green ribbon had written a schedule, the only way to save her was to make him miss an appointment. Chapter 3, Getting Wolfe Out of the Brownstone in December, takes one of three things: an orchid emergency, a gourmet emergency, or an insult to his intelligence that he can't correct from his chair. The green ribbon had managed the third. He came down the stairs in his greatcoat with the expression of a man going to a dentist who has offended him personally. Fritz stood in the hall holding Wolfe's hat as if it were a ceremonial object. Sol Panzer wasn't involved. Wolfe hadn't summoned him yet. And that meant Wolfe expected brains, not bullets, at least for the next hour. Marla Dean stayed in the front room, under Fritz's watchful calm. She wanted to bolt, to call her husband, to pay somebody, to do anything that felt like action. Wolfe denied her all of it by the simple method of being Wolfe. "You will remain," he told her. "You are safer here than in your own conscience." That didn't soothe her, but it kept her seated. At the door, Wolfe paused and said to me, "Mr. Goodwin, you will drive." "Gladly," I said. "The taxi drivers are still mad about the last time you critiqued their steering." Wolfe snorted. "I critique incompetence. It is a public service." New York greeted us with its usual holiday charm: wind like a slap, sidewalks like a skating rink, and car horns playing a tune that was not seasonal. The streets were dressed up with lights. But the city itself stayed the same: hard, hungry, and efficient. Northside Shelter sat on a side street that tried to look harmless by keeping its head down. A sign near the entrance promised warmth and dignity, and the building did its best to deliver both under fluorescent lights. When Wolfe stepped out of the car, he paused, inhaled the winter air, and muttered, "Barbarism." "Think of it as character building," I said. "My character is complete," Wolfe replied and went in. Inspector Kramer's presence was announced by a plainclothes man inside the lobby who looked at Wolfe's size and decided not to argue with physics. Kramer himself was upstairs, making loud noises in an office suite. Stebbins was there too, notebook in hand, always ready to record a sentence that might someday keep him employed. We were met at the top of the stairs by a woman with perfect hair and a clipboard held like a shield. "Nora Spence," she said briskly. "Public relations, Mr. Wolfe. Thank you for coming." Wolfe didn't shake hands. "You are welcome to omit the performance, Miss Spence. Wastes time and paper." Her smile stiffened. "We're under stress." "Every own is under stress," Wolfe said. "It is not a license to recite." Nora's eyes flicked to me. If she had hoped I would smooth Wolfe's edge, she would have better luck smoothing a saw. She led us down a short corridor into the finance office area. The air smelled of disinfectant, stale coffee, and something else. Fear, mostly, with a trace of panic that had been sprayed over with procedure. A narrow-faced man in a tie that had been knotted too often approached, hands clasped, trying to look like a treasurer and not like a man waiting for a judge. "Hal Rudd," he said quickly. "Treasurer, Mr. Wolfe, I'm grateful you're here." Wolfe regarded him. Gratitude is premature. Rudd swallowed. Of course. We've been cooperating fully with Inspector Kramer. It's tragic about Tom. Tragic is cheap, Wolfe said. Facts are expensive. Provide them. Rudd's cheeks colored, but he didn't argue. Men like Rudd survive by not arguing with louder men. A broad, shouldered man appeared behind him, suit clean, but not expensive, posture set for blocking doors. Clay Mercer, he said. Security. Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly at the word. Security, as if it were an insult. You have failed, Wolfe said. Clay's jaw tightened. Excuse me. A safe was opened, Wolfe said. Property vanished, and a finance officer was killed. If your title is security, it is inaccurate. Clay's eyes held steady. I wasn't on duty Christmas Eve. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Convenient. Clay did not like Wolfe, which is always useful. From the doorway of the inner office came a younger man with a driver's shoulders and a wary face. He looked like he'd been told to stand in the room and not talk unless spoken to, and he was doing his best to obey while his nerves tried to escape his skin. Seth Ward, he said. Driver. His gaze went to me first, quick assessment, then to Wolfe, quick recalibration. Seth Ward had never met Wolfe, but he had heard the name. People who work in charity hear names the way cabbies hear streets. Wolfe gestured with a thick finger. Show me the safe. Rudd hesitated. Nora stepped in smoothly. The finance office is sealed as a scene, Mr. Wolfe, Inspector Kramer. Wolfe's eyes chilled. Miss Spence, if you obstruct, I will leave, and then you may continue explaining to donors why a dead man behind your building is sealed. Nora's smile thinned. Of course. Rudd produced a key and opened the finance office door. Inside, it was neat in the sterile way an office becomes when people are frightened to touch anything. A desk, a computer, file cabinets, and against the far wall a heavy safe with a dial, and on the handle of the safe was a green ribbon. Not draped, not tossed, not incidental, knotted. The bow sat like a signature. I glanced at Wolfe. His eyes were on the ribbon as if it had spoken. That is deliberate, Wolfe said. Rudd's voice tightened. We found it that way this morning. Wolfe did not touch it. He stepped closer and studied the knot from a distance. Seth Ward shifted, and I noticed his eyes flick to the ribbon, and then away. That wasn't grief. That was recognition, or fear of recognition, Wolfe said. Miss Spence, do you decorate safes? Nora blinked. Of course not. That's absurd. Wolfe grunted. Absurdities are often clues, Clay Mercer said. Lo, we didn't put it there. Wolfe's gaze slid to him. Number someone who wanted it seen put it there, he said. A calling card. Wolfe nodded once. A message. It says, I was here and I will return. Rudd's hands tightened. This is a shelter. Volunteers come and go. Donors, staff, anyone could. Anyone could not, Wolfe said, and his voice did that quiet flattening that makes men stop protesting. To tie a ribbon to a safe handle inside a finance office requires access. Access requires keys, codes, or authority. Those are not distributed in soup lines. Rudd swallowed. Only Tom, myself, and Miss Voss had the safe combination. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Miss Voss? Helena Voss, Nora said quickly. Executive Director. She's with Inspector Kramer now. Wolfe nodded slightly, filing it. I stepped closer to the safe without touching it. Was it opened Christmas Eve? Rudd hesitated. Seth Ward answered, and his voice came out rough, as if he hadn't planned to speak. Tom opened it, Seth said. Late, Rudd snapped. Seth? Wolfe's eyes moved to Seth like a spotlight. Mr. Ward, you will continue. Seth swallowed. I wasn't supposed to know, he said. But I was there. Tom called me back in, said there was a discrepancy. Wolfe's voice was calm. What time? Seth looked at the floor. Around 11. There it was, the time that had been typed into the blackmail note, Like a nail, Wolfe said. Why did he call you? Seth licked his lips. Because I do deliveries, pickups. He said he needed a box moved. He said it had to be quiet. Clay Mercer's jaw tightened. You never told me this. Seth's eyes flicked to Clay. You weren't there. That's enough, Rudd said sharply, and then remembered Wolfe and softened it into something that sounded like a request. Seth, you're confused. It was chaotic that night. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Chaotic nights do not produce precise blackmail notes. Mr. Ward is not confused, he is frightened. Nora Spence's clipboard hugged tighter to her chest. Mr. Wolfe, we're trying to help. Tom was under pressure. We had gift cards, donors, distribution schedules. Wolfe looked at her. Gift cards. Nora's mouth tightened. Yes, we distribute them to families. How many were in the safe? Wolfe asked. Rudd's voice came out thin. Several hundred. Wolfe nodded slowly. Portable value, easily converted. Kramer's voice boomed from the corridor. Wolfe, you in there? Wolfe didn't turn his head. Yes, Inspector. I am observing what you have not. Kramer barged in, red-faced, Stebbins behind him. Kramer took in Wolfe, the safe, the ribbon, and the little circle of tense shelter people. What the hell are you doing? Kramer demanded. Wolfe replied mildly. What you should have done before you shouted at my assistant, asking questions of the people who know the answers. Kramer glared at Rudd. Rudd, you tell him anything you didn't tell us. Rudd's face stiffened. Seth Ward's eyes flicked to me again. Quick, it was the look of a man trying to decide whether honesty will save him or kill him. Wolfe noticed it and said, Mr. Ward, you are considering whether to speak. Speak now. Seth swallowed hard. Tom had a list, he blurted. The room tightened. Even Nora's clipboard stopped moving. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. A list of what? Seth's hands clenched. Names, donors. People who, he shook his head, breath quick. I only saw the top page. Tom kept it folded. But he said if he went down, he wanted it somewhere safe. He said it was connected to the missing money. Rudd snapped. There is no missing money. Wolfe's gaze shifted to Rudd. Then why did Mr. Baird keep a list? Rudd's mouth opened, closed. Kramer barked. Where's the list, Ward? Seth flinched at Kramer's volume. I don't know. Tom didn't give it to me. He said he might give it to. Seth's eyes flicked to Nora, and then away. Someone. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Someone inside. Nora's smile returned. Brittle. This is speculation. Tom was disorganized. Wolfe's voice turned cool. Disorganized men do not die behind buildings unless someone organizes their death. Clay Mercer shifted, anger rising. You're accusing us. Wolfe cut him off. I am concluding. Accusations are emotional. Conclusions are useful. I said. Seth, why didn't you tell Kramer about the list? Seth's face tightened, because Tom told me not to. He said if the wrong person heard, he stopped. Eyes wide, and I could see the moment his caution collided with Tom Baird's body, in an alley. He said they'd clean the board. Wolfe's eyes went very still. Then he nodded once, like a man hearing the final word he needed. Exactly, Wolfe said softly. Cleaning the board. Kramer stared. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Wolfe looked at him. It means removing pieces. Mr. Baird was a piece. Mr. Ward may be another. Mrs. Dean is certainly one. Marla wasn't there, but her name made the air feel colder. Kramer growled. Wolfe, I've got men here. Nobody's touching my witnesses. Wolfe's gaze held him. Inspector, your men are visible. Visibility is not protection against someone who already has keys. Rudd's voice rose, strained. Keys? What keys? This is a charity, not a bank. Wolfe pointed with a thick finger, not at the safe, but at the ribbon. That knot is a key. It says the blackmailer has access and confidence. He does not fear your police. He does not fear your security. He does not fear your reputation management. He fears only one thing, exposure of his internal mechanism. Nora's eyes narrowed. Internal mechanism. Wolfe nodded slightly. A theft of gift cards requires 3 elements: opportunity, movement, and concealment. Opportunity is the safe. Movement is a driver and logistics. Concealment is documentation and donor psychology. Nora's face went a shade paler. Wolfe continued. Therefore, the blackmailer is not outside throwing stones. He is inside turning gears. Clay Mercer's jaw tightened. You don't know that. Wolfe's eyes slid to him. I know someone tied that ribbon where only an insider could. I know the note's name and exact minute. I know a finance officer is dead, and I know a driver has seen a list. Those are not the products of an outsider. Kramer snapped. So who is it? Rudd, Spence, Mercer, Voss, Ward? Wolfe did not answer directly, which is one of his most infuriating habits. Instead, he said, Inspector, you will do something rare for you. You will be quiet and you will listen. Kramer's face reddened, but he held because Wolfe had the room. Wolfe turned to Rudd. Mr. Rudd, when was the safe last opened legitimately? Rudd hesitated. During the fundraiser, to verify counts. Tom recorded it. Wolfe nodded. Where are the logs? Nora answered quickly. On Tom's desk, digital and paper. Wolfe's gaze moved to Seth Ward. Mr. Ward, where did you take the box Mr. Baird asked you to move at 11? Seth swallowed. Didn't he? Changed his mind. He said someone was coming. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Someone with authority. Seth's face tightened. He didn't say. He just stopped talking when footsteps came. Clay Mercer's eyes flicked. That could have been me. Seth looked at him. Miserable. It wasn't you. Wolfe nodded once, satisfied, not with the answer, but with the contradiction. Contradictions are where Wolfe finds truth hiding. He turned to Nora Spence. Miss Spence, who has access to fundraiser program stock? Nora blinked. Program stock. The paper used for your printed materials, Wolfe said. Who stores it? Nora's smile tightened. Facilities keeps supplies. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Facilities. Kramer frowned. What are you talking about? Wolfe looked at him. The blackmail notes were produced on shelter stock. Therefore, the paper came from inside. If Miss Spence says facilities holds supplies, then facilities holds the means. Clay Mercer spoke up, defensive. Facilities is a closet and a key ring. Wolfe's gaze pinned him. And keys. Clay's mouth shut. Wolfe looked at Seth Ward again. The list. Did you see any name besides donors? Seth hesitated. Then he said quietly, I saw one name that wasn't a donor. Wolfe's voice stayed calm. Which name? Seth's eyes darted to Rudd, then to Nora, then to Clay, then back to Wolfe. He whispered, Marla Dean. The room went still as if someone had killed the power. Kramer swore. Her name was on Baird's list. Seth nodded, shaken, top line. That's why I remembered, I thought. Why is she on a list like that? Wolfe's eyes narrowed with cold satisfaction. Because she is the intended scapegoat. Nora Spence's clipboard trembled slightly, then steadied. Her face was controlled, but the control had a hairline crack. Rudd's mouth opened, then closed. Clay Mercer's eyes shifted toward the door, calculating where danger might come from. Wolfe turned to Kramer. Inspector, do you now comprehend why this is not merely blackmail? Kramer glared, but the glare had lost some heat and gained something like understanding. He's setting her up, Kramer said slowly. He's using Goodwin's lie to make it believable. Precisely, Wolfe said. I felt my stomach tighten again, because hearing it spoken aloud made it solid. Wolfe looked around the room at the shelter's inner circle. Rudd's panic, Nora's Polish, Clay's guarded anger, Seth's fear, and his voice went quietly final. The blackmailer has keys, access, and confidence, Wolfe said. Therefore, he is not outside this organization. He is inside it. He turned to Kramer, and the polite tone vanished. Inspector, if you wish to prevent Mrs. Dean's scheduled burial, you will protect Mr. Ward, secure all records, and permit me to proceed without your noise." Kramer's face reddened. "And what are you going to do?" Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "What I always do." He looked at the green ribbon on the safe handle as if it were a personal insult. "I will take away his confidence," Wolfe said, "and then he will make a mistake." As we left the finance office, I glanced back at Seth Ward. He stood very still, eyes fixed on the ribbon, as if it were already tied around his own throat. And I had the unpleasant feeling that our scheduler, whoever he was, would not tolerate a driver who remembered lists. Chapter 4: The city likes simple murders, a mugging gone bad. A jealous spouse with a temper and a kitchen knife. Something you can explain in 2 sentences and forget in 3. Cyanide is not simple. Kramer called at 11:40, and he didn't start by yelling, which was how I knew the news had weight. He said, "Goodwin, you there with Wolfe?" I looked across the office. Wolfe was in his chair behind the desk, hands folded, eyes half-lidded, listening to the building as if he could hear the truth moving through the pipes. Fritz had just cleared breakfast with his usual silent disapproval of crime in a respectable home. "He's here," I said, "and he's in a mood where he might tolerate you if you speak like a human." Kramer grunted. "Put him on." I handed Wolfe the receiver. Wolfe took it as if it might be contaminated, then spoke in his calmest tone, the one that makes policemen feel like clumsy furniture. "Yes, Inspector." Kramer's voice came through the wire, lower than usual, autopsy on Baird. Wolfe's eyelids lowered a fraction. "Proceed." "It's poison," Kramer said. "Cyanide, not the knife. Knife was staging or rage after. But the thing that killed him, cyanide." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "How administered?" "Stomach contents," Kramer said. "Bitter almond smell." He ingested it. Could have been in coffee. Could have been in a drink. Whoever did it had time and a plan. Wolfe's voice stayed level. Therefore, Mr. Baird was silenced by someone prepared, not impulsive. "Yeah," Kramer growled. "Prepared and inside. You happy now?" Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Inspector, I am never happy. I am occasionally correct." Kramer swore softly. "We're running down everyone who had access to him." "And you will do so loudly," Wolfe said, thereby warning the guilty. "I advise restraint." Kramer snorted. "You advise a lot." Wolfe ended the call with his usual courtesy. He hung up without waiting for permission. I stared at him. "Cyanide." Wolfe nodded once. "It requires procurement. It requires forethought. It requires confidence that the victim will consume it, which means," I said, "Tom Baird trusted whoever gave it to him." Wolfe's eyes sharpened. "Or was forced to accept it as routine, coffee, a holiday drink, a thank-you cup after the gala. Preparedness hides best inside normality." I leaned back and rubbed my forehead. "So the knife was a costume." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Yes, a crude one. It was placed to suggest street violence. Yet his wallet remained, his watch remained. The murderer wanted a story." "The murderer does not want questions." I reached for the green ribbon note on Wolfe's blotter. "And the same man who wants no questions writes schedules and ties bows." Wolfe's gaze dropped to the paper. "Now we will narrow him further." He pushed the note toward me, the paper. "You already said it's specific," I said. "It is more than specific," Wolfe replied. "It is traceable." Wolfe opened a drawer and removed a glossy fundraiser program from Northside Shelter. Cream stock, tasteful design. The kind donors admire for 3 seconds before placing it on a table and forgetting it exists. Wolfe laid it beside the blackmail note and touched the edge lightly. "Look," he said. "I'm looking," I told him. "The fibers," Wolfe said, "and the watermark line. But more importantly, the batch." "Batch," I repeated. Wolfe sighed. The sigh of a man forced to teach. "Printing is not mystical, Archie. It is industrial. Programs are printed in batches. Each batch has slight differences. Cut alignment, trim marks, ink density. The paper in this note was torn from a sheet printed in the same batch as this program." How do you know? I asked. Wolfe's finger tapped a faint speck near the bottom margin of the program. This tiny flaw, an ink dot caused by debris on the press, appears on every program from the batch. It also appears on the note, visible near the lower right, though the note's text attempts to distract. I leaned in. There it was. A tiny dot like a fly had landed in the ink. It was on the program, and on the note, just above the last line, like a signature that didn't know it was signing. Okay, I said. So it's not just shelter stock, it's that printing run. Which means the paper came from the shelter's stored programs, not from a stationery store, not from another charity, not from a random office supply cabinet. I grinned without humor. So our blackmailer isn't just inside the shelter, he's inside the closet. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Or he has access to the closet. Keys, authority, or cooperation. I said, we already have Seth Ward saying, facilities hold supplies. Wolfe nodded. And now we know the murderer is not an impulsive thug. He is prepared. Preparation suggests leadership, and leadership suggests. I said. Summoner who writes scripts. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Yes, he reached for the phone. Mr. Cohen. Lon Cohen answered on the second ring, because he lives as if the telephone were a vital organ. Wolfe. Lon said. I was just thinking. That is regrettable, Wolfe replied. I require information, the North Side Shelter fundraiser program. Who printed it? I am asking you because time is not charitable, Wolfe said. Lon made a sound that could have been pages turning. Printed by Hudson Street, Litho Small Outfit. They do a lot of non-profit runs. Want the manager's name? Yes, Wolfe said. And the delivery log number for the batch. Lon whistled. You are in a mood. Hold on. Wolfe listened, expressionless. When Lon returned with the details, Wolfe wrote them on a pad without looking down. One of those tricks that always irritates me because I can't do it without producing something that resembles modern art. Wolfe hung up and said to me, You will go to North Side again. I stared. We were just there. And we learned. Wolfe said that Mr. Baird was killed with cyanide. Now you will learn who handled the programs where they were stored and who had reason to remove sheets without being noticed. And if I can, I added, I learn who keeps cyanide in their holiday spice rack. Wolfe's gaze held mine. Do not improvise poison jokes in a homicide investigation. Sorry, I said. It's my coping mechanism. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. I will cope without it. He slid the note back into his drawer. Additionally, you will tail Mr. Rudd. I blinked. Rudd. Wolfe nodded once. The treasurer. He controls approval. He will now attempt to control damage. Damage control involves payments. You think he'll pay our blackmailer? I asked. Wolfe's voice was calm. He will pay someone. He cannot resist the illusion that money solves problems. If he believes the problem is violence, he will rent violence. That was Wolfe's neatest trick. He could reduce a man's character to a sentence and be right. I went. By mid-afternoon, North Side was crawling with discreet police, which is like saying a rhinoceros is discreet. People noticed, volunteers whispered. Nora Spence's smile was stretched so tight it looked painful. Clay Mercer watched every corner like a man who expects the walls to move. I did not go in. Wolfe hadn't told me to poke the hornet's nest again. Wolfe had told me to follow the treasurer. Hal Rudd left the shelter at 4:30, carrying a briefcase too tightly. He didn't look like a man going home. He looked like a man going to pay a bill he hadn't budgeted for. I followed at a distance, letting holiday crowds do my camouflage for me. Rudd walked fast, turned twice as if checking behind him, then ducked down an alley behind a diner on 9th. One of those places that smells like grease and coffee and desperate optimism. Behind the diner was a narrow service lane with dumpsters, steam from kitchen vents, and a patch of dirty snow that had been trampled into grey ice. A perfect place for a transaction, because nobody respectable wants to linger there. He wore a city facilities, coat, dark green, reflective strip, patch on the shoulder, and a knit cap pulled low. He held a clipboard like a prop, His stance was too balanced for a municipal worker, and too patient for a man waiting for a bus. Rudd approached him, shoulders hunched against the wind. I tucked myself near the corner of the diner's back wall, where I could see without being seen. I've done it enough that my conscience has stopped complaining. Rudd spoke first, mouth moving rapidly. The facilities man listened without nodding, without shifting, as if speech were something he permitted other people to do. Then Rudd opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope cash in a brown wrapper. He handed it over. The facilities man took it and slid it inside his coat with the smoothness of a man who has done it often enough to be bored by it. Then the facilities man reached into his pocket and produced something small and flat. He handed it to Rudd. Rudd's shoulders loosened a fraction, relief flickering across his face. Brief, involuntary. A key, a card, a slip of paper. I couldn't see, but I didn't need to. Whatever it was, it mattered. Rudd tucked it away quickly and stepped back. The facilities man spoke then, just a few words, and Rudd nodded too fast. The facilities man turned to leave. And as he did, he glanced toward my corner. Not directly, nothing as crude as that, but close enough that I felt the chill of being acknowledged. His eyes were flat, calm, and faintly amused. Then he was gone, walking away behind the diner as if he had just fixed a leaky pipe. Rudd lingered a moment, looking down at his hand, then snapped his briefcase shut and hurried back toward the street, swallowed by the crowd. I stayed where I was for 10 full seconds, because if you move too quickly after being noticed, you tell the other man you know you've been noticed. When I finally stepped out, my phone buzzed. A message from Wolfe, brief as a blade. Report immediately. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe listened without moving. The office smelled of coffee and old leather and Fritz's insistence on order. The city noise outside was distant, muffled by thick walls and thick habits. When I finished, Wolfe said, "Describe the man again." I did: coat patch, stance, calm eyes. Wolfe nodded slowly. "Rented muscle." "And Rudd paid him," I said. "Cash, and got something back." Looked relieved. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "He purchased access or silence, possibly both." I leaned forward. "So, we have an internal brain and an external fist." Wolfe's voice was quiet. "Yes, the brain writes the script, the fist enforces it." "And the script," I added, "uses my lie as a stage prop." Wolfe's gaze held mine. "It uses your lie as a trapdoor." A cold little silence settled between us, because trapdoors don't matter until someone falls through them. Then Fritz appeared in the doorway, composed but urgent in the way only Fritz can manage. "Mr. Wolfe," he said, "Mrs. Dean has received another telephone call." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "From whom?" "She did not recognize the voice," Fritz said, "but she is frightened." Wolfe stood slowly, heavily, decisively. "Of course," he murmured. "The board is being cleaned." He looked at me. "Mr. Goodwin, you will go to Mrs. Dean now." I moved toward the door, and as I did, the phone on Wolfe's desk rang. One sharp ring, then another, insistent, impatient, as if the caller believed he owned the schedule. Wolfe did not pick it up. He watched it ring. Chapter 5. Wolfe's idea of bait is never a hunk of meat on a string. It is always something the other man cannot resist touching because it offends his vanity or threatens his control. That is why, when he said he wanted to leak the confession, I knew 2 things at once. First, that he intended to pull our blackmailer out of hiding. Second, that he intended to use my own skin as the invitation. He didn't phrase it melodramatically. Wolfe rarely does. He sat behind his desk with the green ribbon note in a drawer and the autopsy report in his head, and said, "Mr. Goodwin, we will announce that you are going to Inspector Kramer, and you will tell him the truth about Christmas Eve." I stared. "Announce it to whom?" "The Daily Bugle." "To the person who wrote those notes," Wolfe replied, as if my sarcasm were a minor ailment. "He is listening. He cannot avoid listening. He has built his mechanism on listening." "You're betting he'll panic," I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. He will not panic like a child. He will panic like an accountant. He will attempt to balance a ledger that has suddenly acquired a new column. And the new column, I said, is me talking. Wolfe nodded. Precisely. Kramer, who had been on Wolfe's speakerphone for most of the afternoon and had disliked every moment of it, barked. I don't like using people as bait. Wolfe's gaze didn't shift. Then stop being a policeman. Kramer sputtered. The hell. Wolfe cut him off. Inspector, the murderer used cyanide, which is not impulsive. He has already erased one witness. He will erase more. If you wish to stop him, you will compel him to move where you can see him. Mr. Goodwin's confession provides that compulsion. Kramer growled. I can't stop Goodwin from confessing. Wolfe's mouth tightened. You could if you were competent. You are not. Therefore, you will accept what is offered and be useful for once. The call ended with Kramer's usual farewell, an inarticulate sound suggesting bodily harm. I looked at Wolfe. You've got a very nurturing bedside manner. Wolfe waved a hand. Leave my manners aside. We will proceed. How do you leak it? I asked. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Mr. Cohen, of course. Lon Cohen, Wolfe's favorite messenger, because Lon could make a whisper land in an ear across town. Wolfe called him, fed him one sentence, and watched it become 10. By 6 o'clock, the rumor was circulating through the kinds of channels that don't leave fingerprints. Police precinct gossip, shelter staff whispers, donor cocktail murmurs, and the small, greasy little pipeline that carries trouble from one ambitious mind to another. Archie Goodwin is going to inspect Kramer tomorrow morning and confess his Christmas Eve lie. Wolfe didn't even embellish it. He didn't need to. The truth was sharp enough. Marla Dean heard it from me and went pale. But Archie, she whispered, if you confess, Clifford, I'm not confessing to Clifford, I said. I'm confessing to Kramer. It's different flavor of misery. She grabbed my sleeve. Her fingers were cold. Please, don't do this. Wolfe's voice cut in from his chair. Mrs. Dean, you will not plead for the continuation of a lie that has become your coffin. Marla's eyes filled. She released my sleeve as if it burned. That night, Wolfe insisted. She remained in the brownstone. Fritz moved through the house with quiet efficiency, locking doors, checking bolts, making coffee. No one drank. The orchids upstairs glowed under their lamps like a different world, orderly, green, indifferent. I tried to sleep in my room and failed. When you're scheduled, you don't sleep. You listen for footsteps that aren't there. Morning came grey and cold. I drove to Northside Shelter early because Wolfe wanted me close to the board when it began to change. Kramer had men around the building, plainclothes, trying to look like people who had errands, which is always hilarious because policemen look like policemen even when they're buying donuts. The shelter itself was a hive of strained cheer. Volunteers smiled too hard. Nora Spence's voice carried down hallways like a polished announcement. Hal Rudd moved as if his shoes were too tight. Clay Mercer watched everything. Seth Ward was there. I saw him in the lobby near the loading corridor, shoulders hunched, eyes darting. He looked like a man who had spent the night waiting for a knock that didn't come, and was now afraid the knock would arrive late. I approached him casually, as if we were old friends meeting for coffee, and not two men standing on a crime scene's edge. Seth, I said softly. You said Tom had a list. His eyes flicked to mine. I shouldn't have said anything. No, I agreed. But you did, and that means you're either brave or trapped. He swallowed. Tom told me if anything happened, I should tell someone safe. Wolfe, I said. Seth's mouth tightened. Yeah, you know where the list is, I asked. He hesitated. Number but... His eyes darted toward the hallway that led to the finance office. I saw Tom with it the night he opened the safe. He was scared. He kept looking at the door like he expected somebody. Seth's throat bobbed. I heard footsteps, heavy, like boots. Clay's boots, I pressed. Seth shook his head quickly. Not Clay. Clay walks different. That was a detail Wolfe would love, because Wolfe loves the small ways truth reveals itself without trying. Seth's eyes flicked toward the entrance. I gotta go. Clay wants me to drive donations to a pickup. Donations, I repeated, and I heard my own voice sharpen. Seth's mouth twisted. Yeah, don't ask. That was the wrong thing to say. The city teaches you that when someone says don't ask, you either ask or you die curious. Before I could, Clay Mercer's voice snapped from the corridor. Ward, move. Seth flinched. He looked back at me, and for a second there was a raw plea in his eyes. Then he turned and walked toward the door. I watched him go with a sinking feeling. Seth Ward was a piece on the board that had just stepped into the open, and Wolfe had said the board was being cleaned. At 9:30, Kramer called me. You ready to confess, Goodwin? I glanced at the shelter doors. I'm ready to vomit. Does that count? He growled. Stop, joking. Be outside in 10. We're doing it at the precinct. I want it on record. Fine, I said. I'll bring my halo. I walked back into the lobby to find Seth Ward. He wasn't there. I asked a volunteer. She said he'd gone out. I asked Clay Mercer. Clay said, without looking at me, he's on a run. I felt the pressure in my chest tighten when I stepped outside. The winter air hit like a slap. The sidewalk was crowded with people hurrying past the shelter, heads down, collars up, ignoring the building the way New Yorkers ignore pain unless it blocks traffic. Then I saw the crowd at the curb. A knot of people, a few shouting, a few frozen. A delivery van idled crookedly. A woman had her hands over her mouth. A man was waving his arms at a driver, and in the gutter, half on the curb, half in the street, was a body. Seth Ward. He was crumpled in that ugly way. A man crumples when physics wins. One shoe was twisted sideways. His jacket was bunched under him. There was a dark smear on the wet pavement and a faint chemical smell from spilled antifreeze. A police car was already there. Lights flashing. Kramer's plainclothes, men were pushing the crowd back, yelling, trying to create a space where death could be examined. I pushed through because I had the private detective's most useful skill. I can look like I belong anywhere if I act insulted enough. Goodwin, a plainclothes man barked. Back up. It's my morning, I snapped. Let me have my tragedy. The man hesitated, then muttered, hit and run. Driver took off. Witness says it was a dark vehicle, no plates. Of course, I said, and knelt near Seth's body with a sick calm. Kramer arrived a minute later, face red, breath steaming. He saw Seth and swore with the kind of anger that only comes when a man realizes the case is laughing at him. Damn it, he growled. He was a witness. He knew about the list, I said. Kramer's jaw worked. We had men. You had men, I said, and he still got hit. Kramer started barking orders. Seal the street, canvass, witnesses, check cameras, and while he did, I watched Seth's jacket. It was rumpled, one pocket, seam looked stretched, as if something had been yanked out, but another pocket bulged slightly, inner breast, like a man carrying something small and important. I slid my hand in. My fingers closed on metal. A key. I drew it out slowly, keeping my face neutral because you don't show excitement in front of cops unless you want it confiscated along with your dignity. The key was attached to a small tag. The tag had a snowflake logo stamped into it, and beneath it in plain letters. Snowbox storage, a unit number was etched below. 214. I stared at it until the letters stopped dancing. Kramer saw it. His eyes narrowed. What's that? A direction, I said. He reached, and I closed my fist around it. Easy, I told him. I found it. Kramer's face flushed. This is evidence. So am I said, and you've been mishandling me for years. Kramer glared then, because he knew Wolfe was right about the board. He forced his hand down. Fine, but you hand it over at the precinct. I'll hand it to Wolfe, I said. Kramer's eyes bulged. Wolfe isn't the law. No, I agreed. He's the part that works. Kramer swore again, but he didn't fight because, in that moment, his anger had a new shape. Fear. Fear that the murderer was always one step ahead. Fear that if he didn't let Wolfe run, the case would keep killing people. I stood with the key clenched in my hand and looked at Seth Ward's face, eyes half open, staring at nothing, and I felt the pattern settle into place with the cold finality of a lock clicking shut. Tom Baird had had a list. Seth Ward had hinted at it. Now Seth Ward was dead. Wolfe had been right. Witnesses who knew about the list were being erased, and whoever was doing the erasing wasn't improvising. He was working from the same script as the Green Ribbon, clean, deliberate, confident. I pocketed the snowbox key and looked up at the shelter's front door. Somewhere inside, Hal Rudd and Nora Spence were still smiling for donors, still talking about compassion and holiday miracles. Outside, their driver lay in the gutter. If the blackmailer wanted to clean the board, he had just swept one more piece away. Now, it was our turn to move. Chapter 6. If you want to see a policeman suffer, tell him you found the next step in a murder case, and that Nero Wolfe intends to take it before the precinct does. Kramer suffered so visibly, you could have used him as weather. I came back to the brownstone with the snowbox key in my pocket, and Seth Ward's dead eyes in my head. Fritz met me in the hall, took one look at my face, and didn't ask questions. Because Fritz has the rare gift of knowing when a question would only make the answer worse. Wolfe was in the office, planted behind his desk as if it were a fortress. He had been interrupted during his orchid hour, which meant the room already carried a faint chill. Wolfe can create winter indoors without any help from the city. "Well," he said. I took the key out and set it on the blotter. The little metal tag swung once and settled, the snowflake logo catching the lamplight. "Snowbox storage," I said. "Unit 2, 1, for it was in Seth's pocket, or what was left of it." Wolfe did not touch the key at once. He studied it the way he had studied the Green Ribbon, as if it were a deliberate insult. "A storage unit," Wolfe murmured. "Yes," I said. "And Seth died before he could tell us what was in it." Wolfe's eyelids lowered. He was erased because he knew where to look. "I'd like to stop using the word erased," I muttered. "It makes people sound like pencil marks." Wolfe's gaze lifted. "Mr. Goodwin, if you wish the world to be gentler, you are in the wrong city." The telephone rang, and I knew before Wolfe picked it up who it would be. When a case turns lethal, Kramer becomes a recurring sound. Wolfe answered with a curt, "Yes." Kramer's voice came through loud enough that I could hear it without the receiver. "Goodwin, you got anything off Ward?" Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Inspector, lower your voice, or I will lower it for you." Kramer growled. "To hell with your manners." "You will," Wolfe said. "Obtain a warrant." Kramer paused. "For what?" Wolfe's gaze flicked to the key. "Snowbox, storage, Unit 214. There was a beat of silence, Kramer's brain reluctantly catching up. "How do you?" Kramer began. Wolfe cut him off. "Because my assistant is observant and you are not. Now, Inspector, if you delay, our adversary will empty the unit, and you will have accomplished nothing, except another loud failure." Kramer swore. "We'll get it. Don't you touch." Wolfe ended the call. He looked at me. He will bluster and then comply. "You're optimistic," I said. "I am realistic," Wolfe replied. He enjoys being correct, only when someone else has already done the work. Marla Dean had been in the adjoining room, quiet as a shadow, but at the mention of storage her head lifted. She appeared in the office doorway, eyes wide. "What is it?" she asked. Wolfe's voice stayed even. "A direction, the sort of direction that gets men killed." Marla's hand went to her throat. "Is Seth?" "Yes," I said, before Wolfe could choose a colder phrasing. "Seth is dead." Marla closed her eyes when she opened them again. The fear was still there, but now it had a hard edge of guilt. "This is because of me," she whispered. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "It is because of theft and murder, Mrs. Dean. Do not flatter yourself into thinking your indiscretion is the engine of this." Marla swallowed. "What do you think is in the storage unit?" Wolfe did not answer directly. He gestured with his head. "When the warrant arrives, we will learn." The warrant arrived in the form of Kramer himself, 2 plainclothes men, and Stebbins with a notepad that looked ready to burst into flame from speed. Kramer was already sourer than usual. He'd hauled in Peter Kells and Helena Voss for questions, gotten alibis he couldn't crack in an hour, and hated the fact that the names still fit the shape of the trouble even when the facts didn't. Kramer was already sourer than usual. He'd hauled in Peter Kells and Helena Voss for questions, gotten alibis he couldn't crack in an hour, and hated the fact that the names still fit the shape of the trouble even when the facts didn't. Kramer's face was the color of a boiled lobster. "I got your warrant," he barked. "Now we do it my way," Wolfe regarded him. "You do not have a way, you have a volume." Kramer ignored him and jabbed a finger at me. "You're coming." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Of course he is. He found the key. He will open the lock." Kramer glared at Wolfe. "You coming?" Wolfe looked personally offended. "Number, my presence is unnecessary, and the storage unit will not improve my digestion." Kramer snorted. "Convenient." Wolfe's gaze chilled. "Inspector, do not mistake preference for cowardice." Kramer's jaw worked, but he didn't say it. He had learned at least once a year that picking a fight with Wolfe in Wolfe's office is like picking a fight with a stone wall and expecting applause. Wolfe looked at me. "Bring me what you find." "That's the plan," I said. "Unless the plan is dying in a corridor of storage units." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Do not be melodramatic. It is unbecoming." Snowbox storage was as cheerful as a tax office. Bright lights, clean floors, motivational posters about trust. The clerk at the desk tried to smile and failed when he saw the warrant and Kramer's expression. We went down the corridor to Unit 214, and the air changed the way it always changes in places where secrets are stored. It became dry, stale, and faintly guilty. The padlock was cheap. The key fit neatly. I turned it, heard the click, and felt the small, cold satisfaction of something opening the way it was meant to. Kramer lifted the door. Inside were cartons stacked in tidy rows. The kind of tidy that means someone with a system arranged them. Each carton was stamped in bright red letters. Toys. Kramer snorted. "Holiday inventory." I stepped closer. The boxes sat too square, too solid. A carton of stuffed animals has a sag to it, like a man relaxing. "These cartons stood like soldiers," I said. "Those toys go to the gym." One of the plainclothes men lifted a box and grunted. "Heavy." Kramer's mouth tightened. "Open one." Stebbins produced a utility knife, like a man about to perform surgery on a live animal. He sliced the tape. The flaps opened. No teddy bears. Inside were gift cards, stacked in bricks and bundled tight. And around each bundle was a strip of green ribbon tied into a neat bow. For a moment, the storage corridor was silent, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the tiny scrape of Stebbins's knife as it lowered. Kramer stared. "Son of a..." I lifted one bundle. The cards were from big chains, grocery stores, general retailers, portable money masquerading as generosity. "Looks like Northside's Christmas," I said. Kramer's face darkened. "This is what was in that safe. It matches the ribbon," I said. "Same smug little bow." One plainclothes man snapped photos. The other began counting boxes aloud, because policemen love numbers, when the numbers are not connected to people's motives. Kramer jabbed a finger at the green ribbon. "They tied them up like presents." "Because they are presents," I said. "Just not for the families." Kramer's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell does this?" "Someone who thinks of theft as logistics," I said, "not desperation." We opened a second carton, then a third, more gift cards, more green ribbons, no variation, no panic packing, just a pipeline, assembled, bundled, and stored like inventory waiting for shipment. Kramer looked at me. "Where's the rest? You said missing was a lot." "We haven't counted," I said. "But this looks like enough to ruin a shelter and make somebody rich." Stebbins, flipping through the top layers, said, "There's paperwork under here." He pulled out an envelope from beneath the bottom row. Plain manila. Kramer snatched it and glanced through. "Invoices," he growled. "Vendor records, facilities fees, handling charges." "Fake?" I asked. Kramer's eyes narrowed. "Maybe, but they're meant to justify moving this stuff." He shoved the papers back into the envelope as if they disgusted him. I said, If they can make stolen gift cards look like distribution logistics, they can make anything look clean. Kramer's mouth tightened. We haul it out. We hauled 3 trips, 2 carts, 1 complaining inspector, and a clerk who looked like he wished he had chosen a career that involved less human ambition. We loaded cartons into an unmarked car and 1 police van. Kramer insisted everything go straight to evidence. I told him Wolfe would want it. Kramer told me to go to hell. We compromised the only way Kramer knows how. We went to the brownstone first, with Kramer insisting it was just for Wolfe to look. And Wolfe insisting that if Kramer touched his carpet with stolen charity, he would be billed. Fritz opened the door and took 1 look at the cartons and closed his eyes briefly, as if praying for civilization. "Mr. Wolfe is in the office," Fritz said, "and he will not be pleased." "He's never pleased," Kramer muttered, stomping in. Wolfe did not rise when we carried the first carton into the office. He sat behind his desk as if receiving tribute he hadn't requested. He looked at the red toys label and his mouth tightened with contempt. "Childish," Wolfe said. "Inside our grown up toys," I said, and opened the carton. I lifted out a bundle of gift cards tied with green ribbon and set it on Wolfe's blotter. Wolfe stared at the bow. "The same ribbon used on the notes and on the safe handle," he said, not asking. "Yes," I said, "the same smug knot." Kramer barked. "We found a whole unit full of them. Boxes of gift cards, bundled and packed like product." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Of course, gift cards are portable value. They move easily, and they are difficult to trace." Marla appeared at the office doorway again, drawn by the sound of our voices and the weight of what we carried. She saw the bundles and went pale. "That's," she whispered, "those are ours." Wolfe's gaze shifted to her. "Confirm it." Marla swallowed, stepped closer, and lifted 1 bundle with trembling hands. Her eyes scanned the cards as if reading names on gravestones. "The safe," she said. "Tom told me it was mostly gift cards. We bought them in bulk for families. We had a schedule for distribution the week after Christmas. Hundreds of cards. Maybe more. They're easy to hand out, hard to steal back." Wolfe nodded once. "And easy to resell." Marla's voice cracked. "They were supposed to help people." Wolfe's tone was cool. "They have helped someone, not the intended recipients." Kramer leaned forward, eyes hard. "So who signed off on inventory approvals? Who had keys? Who had access to the safe?" Wolfe did not look at him. "Inspector, you will ask those questions downtown here. You will listen." Kramer bristled, then shut up, because he could see Wolfe's mind moving, and he wanted the conclusion more than he wanted to be offended. Wolfe tapped the bundle lightly with a finger. "This is not desperate theft. Desperation grabs and flees. This is a controlled pipeline," I said. "A system." "Yes," Wolfe replied. "An internal mechanism. Safe access, packaging, storage, and eventual conversion into cash. Someone planned where the cards would go, how they would be explained, and how witnesses would be removed." Kramer's face tightened, Baird and Ward. Wolfe nodded. "They knew about the list, therefore they died." Marla whispered. "What list?" Wolfe looked at her, and for once his voice softened, not into comfort, but into precision. "A list of names connected to missing money kept by Mr. Baird. Mr. Ward saw your name on it. That is why the blackmailer chose you as the scapegoat and Mr. Goodwin's lie as the hinge." Marla's knees seemed to weaken. She gripped the back of a chair. He said, "So the theft and the blackmail are the same machine." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "The blackmail is the control lever. The gift cards are the product. The murders are the maintenance." Kramer swore softly. "We've got enough to arrest somebody." Wolfe's gaze lifted to him, cool and heavy. "You have enough to alarm them. Arrest without comprehension will only cause them to accelerate. And acceleration, Inspector, kills." Kramer's jaw worked. "So what do you do?" "Sit on it." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Number, I use it." He looked at the cartons on his rug as if they were chess pieces, and then his eyes moved to the green ribbon. Still neat, still smug, still pretending. "We will return these cartons Wolfe said quietly. Kramer exploded. Return them. Are you insane? Wolfe's voice did not rise. Not to the shelter, to the board. He looked at me. Mr. Goodwin, our adversary has built a pipeline and believes it's secure. Now he will learn that his product has been moved. That will disturb his schedule. A man who writes schedules cannot tolerate disorder. Kramer glared. You're using stolen charity as bait. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. I am using it as a lever to expose the thief. The charity has already been stolen, Inspector. I am merely retrieving it in a manner that will also retrieve the criminal. Marla's voice was small. And me. Wolfe looked at her. You will remain alive by remaining under my control. If you attempt to improvise, you will die. That landed hard because Wolfe wasn't threatening her. He was stating whether. Kramer stared at Wolfe, then at the cartons, then at me. His face did that familiar twist between rage and reluctant respect. What's the next move? He demanded. Wolfe's eyes lidded again, calm as stone. We invite the pipeline's manager to come looking. As if the universe liked timing, the front doorbell rang downstairs, one sharp ring, then another, too urgent to be a deliveryman, too confident to be a neighbor. Fritz's footsteps sounded in the hall. Wolfe didn't move, he merely said, That will be our guest. Chapter 7. The doorbell rang 3 times. Brisk and confident, like the house owed the caller an answer. Fritz answered it. Of course, Fritz answers bells the way he plates veal, without haste and without surrender. He came back to the office and announced, Mr. Wolfe, Mr. Hal Rudd, and Miss Spence, Mr. Mercer also. Kramer, planted on my red leather chair, like it was a punishment, jerked upright. They're here, right now. Wolfe didn't blink. Naturally, when a pipeline is disturbed, its caretakers appear to see where it leaks. Kramer growled and started to rise, but Wolfe's gaze pinned him. Inspector, Wolfe said, if you display authority prematurely, you will scatter them, and we will spend days hunting shadows. Sit down. Kramer's face reddened. He sat, tight and furious, because in Wolfe's office even a bull learns the furniture has rules. Wolfe nodded to Fritz. Bring them in. Hal Rudd entered first, with a briefcase held like a shield and eyes that went straight to the cartons on Wolfe's rug. He tried to disguise the glance and failed. Nora Spence followed, immaculate, hair perfect, expression composed in the way only a professional smiling woman can manage. Clay Mercer came last, shoulders squared, jaw tight, eyes calculating the room the way a man calculates exits. Wolfe did not rise. He did not offer chairs. He let them stand because standing is uncomfortable and discomfort loosens tongues. Mr. Rudd, Wolfe said mildly. Miss Spence, Mr. Mercer, good afternoon. We have recovered your holiday inventory. Rudd's voice came quick. Mr. Wolfe, those cartons are shelter property. They must be returned. Wolfe's eyelids lowered. Must. Nora stepped in smoothly. Mr. Wolfe, whatever happened, we appreciate that you recovered stolen goods. Wolfe corrected. Do not dress larceny in gratitude, Miss Spence. It wrinkles. Clay Mercer's gaze went to Kramer. Inspector, what is this? Kramer bared his teeth. Evidence. Wolfe's tone stayed calm. Mr. Goodwin, open the carton. I lifted the lid and took out a bundle of gift cards tied with green ribbon. The bow was neat, smug, and familiar, like a signature that believed it was clever. I set it on Wolfe's blotter. Wolfe said, Gift cards stolen from Northside's safe were stored in a snowbox unit. They were bundled with this ribbon. The same ribbon was tied to the safe handle. The same ribbon decorated blackmail notes delivered to my house. Rudd blinked hard. Blackmail notes. Wolfe looked at him. Do not pretend surprise. Treasurers are rarely startled. They are merely inconvenienced. Nora's smile tightened. This is outrageous. You're suggesting. I am demonstrating, Wolfe said, and opened his desk drawer. He removed a manila envelope and slid out several sheets onto the blotter, vendor invoices with clean headings and careful wording. Wolfe touched them as if they offended his fingers. "Fake invoices," he said. "A shell vendor, fees for distribution logistics, and temporary storage handling. Designed to explain the movement of stolen gift cards as routine operations." Nora's eyes flickered. Just once. Clay Mercer's jaw flexed. Rudd's grip on his briefcase tightened until his knuckles paled. Clay said, defensive, "I don't know anything about invoices." Wolfe regarded him. "Number your talent is movement, not arithmetic." Clay bristled. "I do security. You do errands," Wolfe said. "Now, did you move cartons after hours?" Clay's eyes darted to Nora. It was quick and involuntary. Permission, seeking Wolfe saw it, and his mouth tightened with faint distaste. "Answer," Wolfe said. Clay swallowed. "I moved boxes." Wolfe's voice cooled. "Did Miss Spence pay you to do it?" Clay hesitated, then said, "Yes." Nora's chin lifted. "Clay," Wolfe raised a finger at her without looking. Nora stopped mid-breath. Clay's words came faster, as if once the dam cracked, he wanted the water out before it drowned him. "She paid me cash, said it was overtime, said it was donor privacy." "Donor privacy," I repeated. "That's a nice perfume to spray on theft." Clay's face reddened. "I didn't know what was inside." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "You moved cartons labeled toys that weighed like bricks. You are not an imbecile, Mr. Mercer. You are simply obedient." Clay's voice dropped. "She said donors didn't want publicity. She said it was sensitive inventory. She said the shelter's reputation." Nora cut in. Sharp. It was. Wolfe's gaze slid to her. "Then speak, Miss Spence. Your words will be weighed." Nora drew in breath, reassembled her smile, and tried to put Polish over panic. "You don't understand what it takes to keep a shelter running. Donors call, boards panic. One rumor and the funds disappear. Families depend on us. We can't afford scandal." Wolfe's tone was dry. "So you chose concealment." "I chose protection." Nora snapped, and the mask slipped for a second, showing anger under the gloss. "If the public thinks we mishandled funds, we lose everything." I was keeping doors open. Wolfe looked at her as if she were describing burglary as home improvement. "You were controlling the story." Nora's eyes narrowed. "Story. Control is my job." "It is also your sin," Wolfe said. "You used your skill to keep criminals smiling and donors docile while gift cards were packaged like merchandise." Rudd blurted. "This is getting out of hand." Wolfe's eyes moved to him. "Mr. Rudd, you have been quiet." Rudd swallowed. "I'm letting her handle communications." Wolfe's voice turned icy. "You are letting her handle your conscience. It is an abdication." Rudd's cheeks colored. "I deal with numbers, I don't do drama," Wolfe supplied, "or responsibility." Kramer leaned forward, voice rough. "Rudd, you were seen paying a man in a city facilities coat." Rudd went still. Nora's eyes flicked to him and back. Fast, Wolfe said, "You paid him cash behind a diner. Since then you have used him for surveillance and intimidation. That is not security, it is hired coercion." Rudd's voice came thin. "I wanted protection." Wolfe's gaze held him. "Protection against what?" Rudd faltered. Against whoever killed Tom." Wolfe nodded slightly. "And Mr. Ward was killed next in a staged hit, and run after he mentioned a list. Cyanide killed Mr. Baird, prepared, not impulsive. Your hired man wore a costume. Your invoices wear a costume. Everything in this scheme is costume." Nora's lips tightened. "You have no proof of murder." Wolfe's tone stayed maddeningly calm. "At present, I am assigning roles. Murder will be addressed when the murderer is forced into visibility." He looked at Rudd. "You control funds and approvals, you are the money man." Rudd's voice rose. "I signed what Tom put in front of me." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "And Tom is dead." That single sentence dropped into the room like a stone. Clay Mercer looked down. Nora's smile turned brittle. Rudd's briefcase strap creaked. Wolfe's gaze shifted to Nora. "You are the mask." The pleasant face that kept donors calm and suspicion pointed elsewhere. Nora's chin lifted. "I was protecting the shelter." Wolfe's voice was cool. "You were protecting the mechanism." Marla, in the side room doorway, made a small sound. Wolfe did not look at her, but his next words were for her. "Mrs. Dean," Wolfe said, "your name appeared on Mr. Baird's list. That is why the blackmailer chose you as scapegoat and chose Mr. Goodwin's lie as hinge. Your life is being arranged like a narrative. I will not permit it." Kramer pushed back his chair, impatience returning like a fever. "That's it. I'm taking them in." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Not yet." Kramer froze. "Not yet. We've got stolen goods, admissions, fake invoices." "And we have," Wolfe said, "a scheduler still writing appointments. If you seize these three now, you warn the one who holds the lever. He will act in the dark. The dark has already produced 2 corpses." Kramer's jaw worked. He hated it, but he understood enough to hate it properly. Wolfe looked at Rudd and Nora. "You will return to the shelter and behave normally. You will not telephone anyone unusually. You will not flee if you do. Inspector Kramer's men will note it, and they will be less patient than I am." Nora's eyes flashed. "You can't order us." Wolfe's tone stayed mild. "I can because you prefer my order to a public collapse." He turned to me. "Mr. Goodwin, you will make a call." "To Lon Cohen," I said. Wolfe nodded. "You will leak truthfully that you will correct your Christmas Eve, lie to Inspector Kramer tonight. Specify time and place. Our adversary adores schedules. We will give him one he cannot tolerate." Clay Mercer swallowed. "And if he comes?" Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Then he will reveal himself by attempting to prevent speech. That attempt will be witnessed." Nora Spence paused at the door, looking back at Wolfe with a tight, controlled fury. "You think you're taking the story away from us?" Wolfe's gaze held her, unblinking. "No, Miss Spence. I am ending it." The door closed behind them. Kramer exhaled hard, like a man watching his own pride get filed into evidence. Wolfe looked at me. "Archie," he said quietly, "telephone." I reached for the receiver, and the green ribbon on the bundle of gift cards seemed to stare up at me. Smug, neat, confident. Like the man who tied it believed he was still in control of the schedule, Wolfe intended to prove him wrong. Chapter 8. Wolfe does not leak information the way other men leak it. Accidentally, with panic and apologies, he leaks it, the way a plumber opens a valve, on purpose, and with a bucket placed exactly where the spill will do the most damage. At 6 o'clock he told Lon Cohen calmly that the gift card cartons and the invoices were going to the district attorney in the morning, with a sworn statement and Inspector Kramer's signature on the chain of custody. Lon made a pleased noise. "That'll stir the pot." "It will boil it," Wolfe said, and hung up. Marla Dean heard the plan and went pale. "If they think I'm going to the day." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Then they will act. That is the point. You will not leave this house unless I permit it." That was the plan, and it was a good one. Except plans don't run New York at night. Christmas does. And Christmas has tree lots on corners, lit by strings of blinking bulbs and guarded by men in wool caps who don't ask questions as long as you pay cash. Marla wanted air, and Fritz wanted peace. And I wanted to keep her from pacing a groove into Wolfe's rugs. So I took her, with my coat collar up and my patience down, to the nearest tree lot, thinking that a 5-minute stroll among pine needles was less dangerous than another hour in a brownstone with a woman vibrating like a live wire. The lot was bright with colored lights. The smell of sap and cold earth cut through the city's exhaust. People moved between the stacked trees like ghosts shopping for hope. Marla was halfway down the aisle when I saw him. City facilities coat, knit cap, clipboard, same costume I'd watched behind the diner. He wasn't browsing trees. He was scanning faces. When his eyes found Marla, his shoulders changed. He started toward her with that purposeful calm men wear when they've been paid to be certain. I stepped into his path. He tried to go around me. I went with him. He said, "Lo, move." "I'm shopping," I told him. You're crowding my spruce. His hand came out from the coat. Not a gun, not yet, but the kind of grip that means a gun is possible, and restraint is not. Marla's breath caught behind me. I hit him in the ribs with my elbow. Not hard enough to kill him, just hard enough to ruin his timing, he grunted. I grabbed his wrist and twisted. The clipboard clattered to the frozen ground. He lunged at Marla. I kicked his shin and shoved him backward into a stack of trees. Needles exploded. A small boy screamed. A vendor shouted. The city kept blinking as if nothing serious ever happens under Christmas lights. Roy Danner. Because I learned his name later, and it fit him, scrambled, cursed, and bolted for the sidewalk. I chased him 3 steps, enough to make him drop what he was carrying. A thick envelope hit the snow, burst open, and spilled cash-folded bills, clean and ready, like a bribe that hadn't had time to get dirty. Beside it fell a smaller sheet of paper, typed. I snatched it up before the wind could claim it. It said, "Remove her tonight." Marla clutched my sleeve, shaking. "Archie, it's all right." I lied because lying is my reflex and also, at times, my mercy. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe read the order once, then looked up at me with eyes that had lost all softness. "Roy Danner," I said. "City coat, same style as the one Rudd paid behind the diner." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "A glove." Kramer, on the phone, bellowed that he'd put out an APB, that he'd find Danner, that he'd break him in half. Wolfe listened, unimpressed. When Wolfe hung up, he tapped the typed order with a thick finger. "This," Wolfe said, "is not written by a glove. It is written by a hand that believes it can instruct murder as casually as issuing a memo." He looked toward the stairs, where Fritz had guided Marla away, and his voice went very quiet. "Now," Wolfe said, "we stop chasing the glove, and we seize the hand inside it." Chapter 9. Kramer brought Roy Danner in as if he'd hauled him by the collar all the way from the tree lot. Danner's city coat had been replaced by a grey precinct blanket, but the calm was still in him, thin now, stretched and cracking at the edges. We had convened in Wolfe's office, because Wolfe refuses to let truth be dragged into fluorescent corridors and fed to a stenographer like canned peas. Wolfe wants it served hot, in his own chair, with witnesses placed where they can't wriggle. Roy sat on the yellow chair, hands clenched, eyes darting from Kramer's bulldog face to Wolfe's stillness to me. Because he had met my elbow and didn't care to meet it again, Kramer said, "All right, punk, start singing." Roy's jaw tightened. "I didn't kill nobody." Wolfe's eyes half-lidded. "Number, you merely attempted to abduct a woman under Christmas lights on instruction. That is not an improvement." Roy swallowed. "I was paid." Wolfe nodded once. "By whom?" Roy hesitated, and Kramer leaned forward, ready to bark again. Wolfe stopped him with a glance. "Mr. Danner," Wolfe said mildly, "if you require encouragement, Inspector Kramer will provide it in his customary crude fashion. I suggest you spare yourself and speak." Roy's eyes flicked to Kramer's fists, then back. "Hal Rudd," he blurted. "The treasurer, he paid me." Kramer's face went purple with satisfaction. "I knew it." Wolfe didn't even blink. "For what service, specifically?" "Tasks," Roy said. "Watching, delivering, moving people off their tracks." "Targets," I supplied. Roy's mouth tightened. "Yeah." Wolfe's gaze sharpened. "And who selected the targets?" Roy hesitated, then said, "Lower. Nora Spence. She gave the schedules." Kramer barked. "Schedules?" Roy nodded fast. "Times, places, when to scare somebody, when to make a call, when to remove." Wolfe's voice stayed calm. But the temperature in the room dropped. "So Miss Spence was the dispatcher, and Mr. Rudd the payer." Roy looked at Wolfe with a flicker of panic. "I didn't know what it was at first. I thought it was security work. Donor problems. Bad press. Then the note started. Then the lady." He jerked his chin toward the hall where Fritz had taken Marla. "Then it was, 'Remove her tonight.' That's not security." "No," Wolfe said. "It is disposal." Kramer slapped his palm on the arm of his chair. "And the murders. Baird and Ward." Roy's eyes widened. "I didn't do that. I swear. I never touched that finance guy. I never touched the driver. Wolfe nodded slightly. I believe you, cyanide requires a different hand. Roy sagged a fraction, grateful for any belief. Wolfe said, now we will address the notes. He opened a drawer and withdrew the green ribbon blackmail letter and set it beside a sheet of shelter printing stock Nora had brought in earlier. Program paper. Then he placed one more item on the blotter, a typed memo Rudd had signed at the shelter, obtained by Kramer's men in their recent scramble to look competent. Wolfe tapped the memo with a finger. Inspector, you seized Mr. Rudd's office typewriter? Kramer grunted. Yeah, evidence is running it now. Wolfe nodded. Good. We do not require it physically. We require its habits. He indicated the typed lines. Observe the letter E. I leaned in. The E sat wrong, tilted, a little bruised, as if the type bar had been bent and never corrected. It wasn't obvious at a glance, but once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it, Wolfe said. The blackmail notes contain the same defect. The invoices contain the same defect. Mr. Rudd's memo contains the same defect. A typewriter's flaws are signatures more honest than ink. Kramer's eyes narrowed. So Rudd typed the notes. Wolfe's voice was flat. Or he controlled the machine and permitted the notes to be typed. Either makes him responsible. From the hall came a faint sound. Marla shifting, listening. The trapdoor creaked in her imagination. Wolfe's gaze moved to Roy Danner. Mr. Danner, did Miss Spence ever instruct you to mention Mrs. Dean by name? Roy swallowed. Yeah, she said. She said if anybody asked. It was all about her. Rich donor, special treatment, bad behavior. She said the public would believe it. Wolfe nodded once. Because it was prepared. Kramer turned his glare on Nora Spence's empty chair, as if he could arrest furniture. Where is she? Wolfe said. In the front room. Fritz is watching her. Fritz is more reliable than your men. Kramer started to argue, then remembered Fritz and shut up. Wolfe leaned back, folded his hands, and spoke as if he were dictating a label for a jar. The lie Mr. Goodwin told on Christmas Eve, Wolfe said, was not merely blackmail leverage. It was insurance. Roy blinked. Insurance? Yes, Wolfe replied. If the theft was questioned, the story became, Mrs. Dean was present. Mr. Goodwin lied to cover her. The shelter was compromised, and the scandal explains all missing value. Mr. Rudd would then present himself as the dutiful treasurer cleaning up chaos, while the gift cards vanished through his pipeline. I felt my stomach tighten because hearing it in that clean sequence made my lie look like a trapdoor with fresh hinges. Wolfe's eyes held mine for a second, no reproach, only accuracy, then shifted away. Kramer's voice came rough. So Goodwin's lie was the trapdoor under her feet. Wolfe nodded. Precisely. Kindness becomes lethal when it is made into structure. The office door opened and Nora Spence appeared, composed, pale, with her clipboard clutched like a relic. Behind her, Fritz stood quietly, as if he could prevent collapse by refusing to move. Nora saw Roy Danner and froze. Her mask tightened, then slipped. Wolfe's voice was mild. Miss Spence, Mr. Danner has named you. Nora's chin lifted. He's lying, Roy said, quickly. I'm not. Wolfe didn't look at Roy. He looked at Nora. Miss Spence, do you wish to deny that you provided schedules, targets, and narrative control? Nora's eyes flicked. One dart toward the window, another toward the door, calculating exits that didn't exist. Then very softly she said, Hull said it was necessary. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. Necessary for what? Nora's voice cracked, just enough for the truth to seep through. For control, for keeping donors calm, for keeping the shelter. Her breath hitched. Hal said if anyone questioned the missing cards, we'd use Marla. He said Archie's lie was perfect. He said it would all fall on her and him, and we'd be clean. Marla's small gasp came from the hall like a pin dropping. Wolfe's voice stayed steady. So, the trapdoor was built, and you polished it. Nora's shoulders sagged. I was protecting the shelter. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. You were protecting theft with a smile. Kramer rose, fists clenched, and for once he didn't yell. He just said, low and grim, "That's enough." Wolfe watched him, then looked at me. "The trapdoor is now visible," Wolfe said quietly. "And once a trapdoor is seen, it cannot be stepped on again." Chapter 10. Wolfe insisted on the full gathering, because Wolfe always insists on the full gathering. It is his one theatrical vice, and he justifies it by calling it efficiency. He likes witnesses the way a watchmaker likes good light. Without them you can still do the work, but you may miss the small movement that proves you were right. So, by 8 o'clock the office was full. Inspector Kramer, Stebbins with his notebook, Roy Danner slumped in the yellow chair under guard, Nora Spence pale and rigid on the sofa, Clay Mercer perched on the edge of a chair like a man afraid it will accuse him, and Marla Dean in the doorway of the side room, held there by Fritz's quiet presence and Wolfe's quieter command. Hal Rudd arrived last, escorted by 2 plainclothes men, still clutching his briefcase as if it contained immunity. Wolfe did not greet him. Wolfe did not need to. Wolfe looked at him the way a man looks at a stain he intends to remove. "Mr. Rudd," Wolfe said. "You have been busy." Rudd's chin lifted. "This is ridiculous. I'm cooperating. I've done nothing but try to keep the shelter afloat." Wolfe's eyelids lowered. "Then you have a talent for buoyancy, because you have floated over 2 corpses." Kramer's face tightened. "Sit down, Rudd." Rudd sat. He did it with resentment and a faint tremor. Wolfe gestured to the cartons on the rug. "We will begin with a product. Stolen gift cards, packed in cartons, labeled toys, stored in a snowbox unit, bundled with green ribbon. The ribbon is consistent because it is a brand, and criminals enjoy branding as much as charities do." He indicated the envelope of invoices. "We continue with concealment, shell invoices, fabricated vendor records, and the soothing phrase, distribution logistics." "Miss Spence, you understand soothing phrases?" Nora's jaw tightened. She said nothing. Wolfe's gaze shifted. "We add enforcement." Mr. Danner wore a city facilities coat to appear official. He delivered threats and attempted abduction. Mr. Rudd paid him, cash. Rudd's face flushed. "That man is a liar." Wolfe's voice stayed calm. "He is a glove. Gloves lie to keep the hand warm. They do not lie about whose wrist they cover." Roy Danner spoke quickly, desperate. "He paid me. Behind the diner, he said it was for security, then it was for removing people." Wolfe nodded once, as if Roy's panic were merely punctuation. "We now reach the murders," Wolfe said, and the room tightened. Tom Baird was not killed by street violence. He was poisoned with cyanide, prepared, deliberate. The knife was staging for the story. Seth Ward was killed in a staged hit, and run after he hinted at a list of names tied to the missing money. Witness removal is maintenance. The mechanism must be kept clean. Clay Mercer swallowed. Nora's eyes fixed on the rug. Marla's hands clenched. Wolfe looked at Hal Rudd. "You controlled the money. You controlled approvals, and you controlled the typewriter." Rudd's head snapped up. "Typewriter." Wolfe slid a sheet across his blotter, one of the blackmail notes, its text cold and orderly. Beside it he placed a shelter memo signed by Rudd. "Observe the letter E," Wolfe said. "It tilts. It bruises the line. The defect appears in your memo, in the blackmail notes, and in the invoices. A typewriter's flaw is a signature more honest than ink." Kramer leaned forward, eyes hard. "We ran the machine. It matches." Rudd's face went gray, then red. "That proves nothing. Anyone could use." Wolfe cut him off. "Anyon could not. You were the treasurer. The machine was yours." The notes named an exact minute on Christmas Eve. That minute was known to those inside your shelter and to those you hired. You used Mr. Goodwin's lie as insurance. Marla made a small sound in her throat, and this time Wolfe looked at her. "Mrs. Dean," Wolfe said, "your name was placed on Mr. Baird's list because you were to be the scapegoat. When the theft was questioned, Mr. Rudd intended to open the trapdoor, your alleged presence, Mr. Goodwin's lie, and a narrative of donor misbehavior to satisfy public hunger for blame. Nora's voice cracked thin. Hal said it would save the shelter. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. It would save his theft. Rudd's jaw tightened. You're all insane. This is a misunderstanding. I can make it right. The gift cards can be replaced. I can write a check today. Wolfe regarded him with faint contempt. You cannot write your way out of murder. Rudd's breathing quickened. He looked at Kramer, then at the plainclothes men, then at the door, and I saw the moment his calculation shifted from bargaining to flight. Wolfe saw it too. Wolfe's voice came down like a lid. Do not, Wolfe said softly. Rudd rose anyway. Too fast. Chair scraping, briefcase jerking up as if it could pull him through space. That move sealed him more neatly than handcuffs ever could, because an innocent man does not bolt from a room full of explanations. Kramer lunged. Rudd. The plainclothes men were quicker. They blocked the door. Rudd tried to shove through. One man twisted his arm behind his back with professional boredom. The briefcase hit the floor and popped open. Papers spilled, receipts, ledger copies, and a roll of cash bound with a rubber band. Kramer snapped cuffs on him with grim satisfaction. You're under arrest. Rudd's face contorted. You can't. Kramer's grin was ugly. Watch me. While they hauled Rudd out, Wolfe sat back as if he had merely concluded a lecture. He looked at me. Mr. Goodwin, Wolfe said, we are not finished. You will now remove your lie from their machinery. Kramer paused at the door, still holding Rudd's arm. Yeah, Goodwin, let's hear it clean. My stomach tightened. I looked at Marla, pale, trembling, but still standing. Then I looked at Wolfe, who did not offer comfort, only the chance to be exact. I said, Kramer, last Christmas Eve I lied to you. Marla Dean called me, frightened, and I gave her a false alibi, because I thought it was mercy. It wasn't. It became leverage. It became a trapdoor. I'm telling you now because it's mine, and I'm not letting criminals use it again. Kramer's eyes held mine for a long beat, then he grunted, It'll go in the report. Good, I said. Let it. Wolfe's voice was quiet. Final, kindness survives only when truth refuses to stay buried. No one spoke after that, not because Wolfe had thundered, but because he hadn't needed to. The sentence sat in the room like a weight, and you could feel each person deciding what it meant for them. Outside, New York kept blinking its holiday lights and selling its seasonal cheer. But in Wolfe's office, the mechanism had been exposed: product, concealment, enforcement, maintenance, and the trapdoor lie that almost swallowed a woman whole. Wolfe turned his gaze away, already returning to the only living things he trusted. Fritz, Wolfe called, I will have beer. Because for Nero Wolfe, justice is an intellectual conclusion, and supper is always on time.